Good morning, everybody. It is 7 o'clock Monday morning. It's been a controversial move, but will NHS workers be able to carry on working without having a mandatory vaccine? Murmurs of a possible decision this morning reversing the government's position. So what about those who've already lost their jobs for refusing to get one? We'll talk to the frontline health worker who challenged the health secretary over it. That's at 9:20. Plus, with a Russian invasion of Ukraine highly likely, what will it take to stop President Putin? We'll ask the Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Simon Clarke, plus the Shadow Attorney General, Emily Thornberry. It's Monday, the 31st of January. Is a U-turn on the cards? Reports this morning compulsory vaccines for health workers could be scrapped because of a staffing crisis, with warnings of a Russian invasion highly likely. NATO bolsters operations as the UK prepares to reveal tougher sanctions against Russia today.
Two storms have hit Scotland and the north of England over the weekend. Thousands of people have been left without power.
The Manchester United footballer Mason Greenwood remains in police custody after being arrested on suspicion of rape and assault. The new warning for women gamblers will speak to someone who had 76 different gambling accounts. As my director says, absolute banger. Streaming controversy. Spotify agreed to content warnings after Joni Mitchell adds her voice to a row over COVID vaccine misinformation. Whether you're watching us in Singapore or South Africa this morning, you're very welcome. A new warning on AstraZeneca side effects. We'll get the lowdown from our resident GP, Doc Lloyd. That's at 8:40. And feel the rhythm, feel the rhyme. The former DJ turned skier remixing the spirit of Cool Runnings and preparing for the Winter Olympics. We'll speak to Benjamin Alexander at 8:45. Hello, everybody. How you all feeling? We'll get you through the morning. Don't you worry. We start this morning with rumours of a big U-turn. It's been reported that mandatory COVID vaccinations for healthcare workers will be scrapped amid warnings of a severe staffing crisis if the policy goes ahead. The Department of Health telling us they don't deny the report. The deadline for NHS staff to have their second dose is the 1st of April, or they risk losing their jobs. That means that in order to meet the deadline, they must get their first dose by this Thursday, the 3rd of February. 77,000 NHS staff in England could be impacted, with women and ethnic minorities the hardest hit. The policy came into effect for care workers in November, and around 40,000 are thought to have lost their jobs. OK, let's talk about it in more detail, should we? Katie's joining us this morning with the details. Hi, Katie. Good morning.
Hello,
good morning.
Good morning.
So it's not been denied?
No, it hasn't. So last night, the government was questioned about this policy, and they did not deny, as you say, that it looks like it's going to be scrapped. And it has been, I think it's fair to say, pretty controversial. I mean, it really would be an 11th hour U-turn, with workers obviously having to get their first jab by the 3rd of February, which is this Thursday, in order to meet that deadline. Now, it's understood partly this climb down is because the policy was brought in when Delta was the dominant variant. And Sajid Javid last week, the health secretary, has said that given that Omicron makes up nearly all cases now, the policy was being kept under review in light of the fact that Omicron is intrinsically less severe. But of course, the main issue really is this huge fears of a staffing crisis if this policy was brought in. 77,000 NHS workers thought to be facing the sack because they didn't want to get those two vaccines. And we've had warnings from the Royal College of Nursing, the Royal College of Midwives, among others, that this could have a real impact on patient care if those workers were to lose their jobs. Now, we've heard from the Royal College of Nursing about this potential climb down, and they said they welcome the decision to scrap the policy. And despite encouraging vaccines among all their staff, they said making it mandatory was the wrong policy and would have added to current pressure on the NHS and social care.
I know you're going to go out and about and find out what health workers are thinking about that, so we'll speak to you in the next hour. Thanks so much indeed. Thanks a lot. What about the papers? What do they think about it? Quick look at some of the front pages this morning for us. Boris Johnson is preparing a blitz of policy announcements, which he hopes will capture the news headlines this week, according to The Eye. But the paper says it won't be enough to drown out the noise from the ongoing Partygate scandal. Meanwhile, the Metro, I'll say that again, splashes on the backlash from Tory backbenchers over the £12 billion hike in the national insurance, which is set to go ahead. Lots to talk to the Minister about, isn't there? Simon Clarke, Chief Secretary of the Treasury, is with us. Good morning.
Good morning, Kate.
Thank you so much for joining us on the programme this morning. Let's start with those COVID jabs. Are they going to be scrapped?
Well, this is a policy that we've always kept under review, and we've been trying to strike, throughout this pandemic, the right balance between having the maximum impact in terms of measures that support public safety in the face of the virus, but also have the minimum impact in terms of our wider freedoms as a society. And it's in that context that a decision was made last autumn to make sure that we went ahead with the mandatory vaccination policy. And that was because, obviously, we had the Delta variant, extremely dangerous, taking a huge toll on our society. And we wanted to make sure that people going into hospital, very vulnerable people, whether they had COVID or another condition which required treatment, weren't going to be faced with an increased risk of infection on the wards. We continue to monitor that situation very, very closely. What we know about Omicron is that it is much more transmissible, but less severe. Any decision that's taken this week will reflect that reality. I can't prejudge the decision that is going to be made, but obviously we do recognise those realities, and that does open a space where we can look at this again.
Fulsome answer. I want to play you this grab and see whether this is why there was the change of heart. Here we go.
Maybe there's an opportunity to reconsider with Omicron and the changing picture, or at least to nuance it and allow doctors who've had antibody exposure, who've got antibodies, who haven't had the vaccination, to not have it.
There you go. So he was challenged. The Health Secretary was embarrassed. Around 80,000 healthcare workers are still unvaccinated. What's going to happen to them now?
Well, it has to be seen in the wider context. There are 1.2 million full-time equivalent staff in the NHS. That's actually gone up 45,000 over the last year. So it's a well-staffed service. But obviously,
it's not a well-staffed service at all. It's very short-staffed.
Well, actually, it's not. It's got 45,000 more full-time equivalent staff in it than it had.
40,000 care staff lost their jobs because they hadn't been vaccinated.
Well, look, that's separate from the NHS. We've got 45,000 more staff than we had a year ago. 1.2 million in total full-time equivalent. And we always want to make sure those numbers stay.
Lost their jobs,
we always want to make sure that those numbers stay as robust as they can possibly be, and that we can provide the best possible care. But we also, as I say, have to balance that against the reality that if you are not vaccinated, then you do obviously pose more of a threat both to yourself, your colleagues, and to patients. And that is the stark reality of a highly transmissible, very dangerous virus. That's why we have taken the measures we have. Obviously, when it comes to Omicron and the fact that the virus has mutated, we continue to monitor the impact of wider policy.
So what about those people, those 80,000 healthcare workers who are still waiting to find out whether they're going to keep their jobs or not from April? What's going to happen?
Well, there will be a decision made in the course of the next few days, and that opens the window, as I say, for us to look at this.
Let's talk about national insurance going up, should we? It is going up, according to both the Chancellor and the Prime Minister. They underlined that in the papers yesterday. This is what the Prime Minister said on the 29th of November 2019.
Read my lips, we will not be raising taxes on income or VAT or national insurance. On the contrary, what we are doing...
For the lifetime of that government.
For the lifetime of the Parliament.
Well, that was about 3 months before the coronavirus pandemic hit, which has left us with this enormous backlog of NHS treatment. I think everyone watching this programme will know someone who's been affected by NHS waiting lists for key treatments going up as a result of the backlog in care flowing from the pandemic. The NHS and social care levy, that is going to allow us to do 9 million more scans, checks and operations, things which will bear down on that backlog, make sure we can get back to normal, and also address what we all know to be the long-term challenge of an ageing society in terms of a sustainable solution to social care.
Steady on. The Tory Manifesto 2019, we promise not to raise the rates of income tax, national insurance or VAT. This is a tax guarantee that will protect the incomes of hard-working families across the next Parliament.
Yeah, and look, I'm a low-tax Conservative. I think everyone who stood on that manifesto was proud of the fact that we committed not to raise taxes, but no one could have reckoned with the impact of what we've seen over the last 2 years. It's been an extraordinary event. We've spent over £400 billion responding to coronavirus, and obviously that's allowed us to both keep the health service running, but also to introduce things like the furlough scheme, which have saved literally millions of jobs. It's in that context that we've incurred these huge debts. It's in that context as well that we've accumulated these NHS backlogs, and we have to be honest with people. We can either pay for more treatments by whacking up borrowing, which is just taxes deferred for the next generation, or we can deal with it responsibly now.
Here's a thought. Why don't we do this instead? Why don't we use that 350 million quid a week that we were promised that would amount to £18.2 billion a year for our National Health Service, which we heard so much about during Brexit, which is £6.2 billion more than what the National Insurance rise will get. I'm not sure if we've got a picture of the boss, just to make the point.
Well, I mean, as someone who's supported Brexit, I'm delighted that we're no longer sending that money to Brussels. But
we were told that it was going to be used.
And indeed, if you remember, Theresa May in 2018 specifically did repurpose.
On the side of the boss.
Yeah, and that money is now in the NHS. This is the point. Theresa May unleashed a record funding settlement.
So you miscalculated?
No, no, because we've got more of a backlog in the NHS than anyone knew. But for the 70th anniversary of the NHS back in 2018,
that money went to the NHS.
We gave a record
penny
we gave
that you promised on the side of that boss.
We gave a funding settlement to the NHS which was actually larger than that sum, and that was Theresa May's announcement back in 2018.
OK, so the people that are facing a 10% increase in their national insurance contributions, someone earning £30,000 will now pay £270 more a year, given that the cost of living is increasing, given that the heating their homes is just going to be almost impossible for so many people, going up perhaps £1,000. Where are they going to find the money from?
Well, the cost of living is a major issue. It's important, though, to be clear about what the health and social care levy will cost. The 6 million lowest earners won't pay anything extra. And the top 15% of earners will pay almost half the cost of the policy. So it's a very progressive policy. For your average taxpayer, this is a question of literally £3 or £4 more per week. In the context of bearing down on this huge backlog, as I say, of accumulated waiting lists, we have to make sure that we can fund that sustainably.
So
as I say, the only alternative...
Every single penny will go to the National Health Service and social care?
It will, yes. This is an entirely dedicated tax for those purposes. It goes nowhere else.
Why should we believe you when you've lied to us before?
Well, with respect, Kay, I haven't. And not...
When I say you, I meant you're representing the government this morning. Well, so collectively, I've just showed you how you did.
We didn't lie. We made a commitment.
Economical with the actuality.
No, we made a commitment in 2019 that we weren't going to raise taxes. That was before a global pandemic, which has cost hundreds of thousands of lives. It's accumulated a enormous backlog in care, and we have to make responsible decisions. I think a Conservative government will always take a fiscally responsible route, and it is simply irresponsible for us to say we're going to whack all of this on our debt when we know that is already extremely large, at a record high, and crucially when a 1% rise in interest rates would cost us an extra £23 billion a year.
Is the Prime Minister always honest with us?
He is.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I absolutely do. I'm very proud to be a member of his government.
OK, so the fact that he has basically said that he wasn't aware of parties at Number 10, it's been proven that not only was he aware of them, but he was also at them. It's also been proven that he misled Parliament. Let's not overcomplicate the matter. Given what we're hearing Sue Gray's been investigating, the police are investigating, he should just resign. No,
well, look, the Sue Gray report will come forward soon, and obviously I don't know exactly when. That's a matter for Sue Gray to decide. And when she does, the Prime Minister's been clear he will come to Parliament and make a further statement based on all the facts. But look, the Prime Minister is a good man, he's a good leader. And I think I think it's very important that we allow an independent.
Sacked twice for lying.
I think
once from a national newspaper and once by Michael Howard.
I think it is absolutely vital that we don't prejudge what Sue Gray is going to say, or indeed what the Met Police are investigating.
My point is, you said he doesn't lie, and I've made a point. I've just illustrated twice.
I have total confidence in the Prime Minister.
But you said he didn't lie.
And I do not believe that he does lie.
OK, so why did you think he was sacked by the Times for lying?
I don't know.
By Michael Howard for lying.
I don't know the circumstances.
I've just illustrated how
I don't know the circumstances of the Prime Minister's previous employment. OK, that's simply.
Michael Howard works for the Conservative Party.
Look, the decisions about who was on the shadow front bench 15 years ago and the precise circumstances which surrounded any of those
If there were lies
decisions.
that were made 15 years ago, they don't count then?
OK, what I'm saying is that we've got to wait for the Sue Gray report.
OK, talk to me about what's going on as far as Russia is concerned. We're told that there'll be new sanctions. coming forward quite soon. Tory party do take quite a lot of money off the Russians, don't they?
Well, any donations which are received by any politician from any party have to be from UK donors. No one in British politics can take money from foreign donors.
Of course.
And any such declarations have to be properly declared. On the wider Russia situation, it's really important, I think, that we're clear today. It is obviously very serious, and we are keeping a very watchful eye on what's happening in the Ukraine. And any decision by the Russian government to invade would be a disastrous act on their part, which would incur the harshest possible sanctions.
Talking about the sanctions, though, and the Russia report, much delayed until after the last election, finally in July of 2020. The UK welcomed Russian money and few questions, if any, were asked about the provenance of the considerable wealth.
Well, the UK is one of the most robust money laundering regimes in the world.
I'm glad you said that, because let me put this to you then. No one has done more to channel the flood of money out of Russia than London's army of lawyers, bankers and accountants.
Well, look, we obviously continue to monitor the challenges which flow from the fact that London is one of the world's primary financial centres, and obviously that is a challenge as well as a huge asset to the United Kingdom that we are such a financial hub. When it comes to the wider impact of Russian money, we continue, as I say, always to monitor the situation, and we are very clear that if Russia takes further action against the Ukraine, then we will further tighten the sanctions regimes, targeting those businesses and people with the closest links to the Kremlin.
Boris Johnson has been very close to oligarchs in his career. 2014, he £160,000 donation to the Conservative Party by a former Russian minister's wife so that she could play tennis with him and David Cameron.
Well, anyone who donates to any political party has to be a UK national. That is the reality of the laws that we have in place. Those laws are scrupulously respected by the Conservative Party, as indeed I would hope they are by all political parties.
Let me put this last point to you, if I may, and then I must let you go. Again, from the Russia report, a member of the committee that looked into it, Stuart Hosey, said there had been no assessment of Russian interference in the EU referendum, and that goes back to nobody wanting to touch this issue with a 10-foot pole. He said it was astonishing that the UK government didn't seek to protect the referendum by looking into potential interference. So you weren't very interested before Brexit. Well, why should we believe you now?
There's two things to say about that. One is that Stuart Hosey is an SNP MP, and we know the SNP's position.
What does that mean?
We know the SNP's position on Brexit, which is obsessionally against. The other thing to say is that Brexit Britain.
Are you rubbishing the Russia report?
Brexit Britain is one of the foremost opponents of the actions of the Putin regime. And if you look at the EU, it is countries like Germany who are dragging their feet when it comes to the response to this crisis. We are the ones tightening the sanction regime, making sure we support our NATO allies and standing up to Putin in a way which, frankly, is leading the continent rather than following it.
Alok Sharma, Dominic Raab, Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister, Brandon Lewis, all took money directly from the Russians or via their constituency offices in order to continue in power.
Sorry. Kate, no one has taken money from the Russians. Let's be very clear about this.
People who are Russian.
No, people who are British citizens. Okay. It is vital we establish that distinction. It is simply not true
to say that we have money in Russia, then. Well, Russian oligarchs.
One needs to be a UK national, a British citizen, in order to make a donation. Any such donations are properly scrutinised and declared as part of our legal process.
And any of those people having links to Russia, do you think?
Okay, look, there's nothing wrong with any person in business having a link with any country, as long as it's legally acquired wealth, and how they choose to spend it at that point is a matter for them. But
even if it's £160,000 to play tennis with Boris Johnson.
Well, look at the situation with Barry Gardiner and the Chinese a few weeks ago. The idea
doesn't make it right.
But to be very clear, the idea that this is some sort of unique Conservative Party problem, it is not. There is always a challenge about making sure that we have a proper declaration regime in place.
It is a problem, then?
No. Look, to be clear, there will always rightfully be scrutiny on this.
You accept that the coffers of the Conservative Party will suffer if you bring in new sanctions?
No, what I would say very clearly is that there is a need to make sure that all donations are properly declared, which they are. There is always a need to make sure that these things are properly scrutinised, which they can be. Right. But it is also not true to say that this is Russian money. These are British citizens making donations to political parties of their choice. That is their right. And I think it is important we don't muddy the waters on this issue. No. To do so is to undermine a wider faith in politics. I believe British politics to be fundamentally clean, and I think it is important we establish that reality.
Absolutely. It's good to talk to you. Sadly, we're out of time. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, Minister, at 9 a.m. Next Monday, the 7th of February. The Education Secretary, Nadeem Zahawi, will be here to answer all of your questions. You can send them to us via Twitter or email asktheeducationsecretary@sky.uk. Still to come on the programme for you, 7:30, as the Wait for Sue Gray's Downing Street Parties report continues. We'll explore the legal side of lockdown breaking with the human rights barrister Adam Wagner. 7:40, we'll be joined by the trainee nurse who's been reinterpreting some of history's artistic masterpieces for the era of COVID-19. And at 7:45, I'll be speaking to the former Justice Secretary David Gauke about what could come of that report by Sue Gray and what it could mean for the Prime Minister. Around 11,000 homes in England and Scotland are still without power after Storm Malik brought winds of 100 miles an hour over the weekend. And now Storm Corrie is causing more bad weather. There's a yellow weather warning in place until 10 a.m. for parts of the east coast. Standing by for us is James in Aberdeen. Hi, James. What's it like up there?
It's not bad, Kay. It was a lot windier last night, I can tell you. I'm on the beachfront at Aberdeen. The sea gives us a visual representation of how stormy things are, doesn't it? We'll take a look. That's calm for Aberdeen at the tail end of January, I can tell you, as the sun says hello beyond the horizon. You can just pick out the lights on the horizon, actually. North Sea traffic coming to and from the rigs in the North Sea. Conditions calmer for them this morning. I suppose the big question is what's happening on land. We won't get a full picture of that until daylight. There has been damage, there has been disruption. The question will be how many more people are disconnected, how much more travel disruption on the roads is there. Daylight will tell the tale of that. But as you said, thousands of people remain without power. The trouble is, of course, we had two storms in the space of a short space of time, and it's a question of access to more than 200 faults on the power network north of the border. They need to be sorted so that the people who are disconnected can be reconnected. SSEN, one of the power suppliers here, are saying that could take until tomorrow to sort that out. Big travel disruption as well. The rail services, ScotRail cancelled its services after 6 p.m. last night. Check before you go anywhere to see that you can indeed fulfil your journey this morning. That's the advice, Kate.
OK, thanks a lot. Keep an eye on that for you, of course. Powerful winter storm pummeled large parts of the US as well. Have a look at this. More than 1,400 flights were cancelled in the US yesterday after the fierce storm that hit northeastern parts of the country. At least 3 people are known to have died and more than 100,000 left without power. Some areas saw more than 2 feet of snowfall in a single day. 19 people have been killed by flooding and landslides in Brazil, including 9 children. Heavy rainfall in the country's largest state, Sao Paulo, has also forced some 500,000 families from their homes over the weekend, according to local authorities. Looking at some of the other stories making headlines for you on the programme this morning, the Manchester United footballer Mason Greenwood, there he is, has been arrested on suspicion of rape and assault. The 20-year-old remains in police custody. It comes after a woman who alleged incidents of violence posted on social media. The United Arab Emirates says it's intercepted another ballistic missile fired by Houthi rebels from Yemen. The Israeli President Isaac Herzog was making his first visit to the UAE at the time. This is the 3rd missile attack to target the UAE by the Houthis this month. More passengers will receive compensation for delayed domestic flights under plans announced by the Transport Secretary. Grant Shapps is proposing payouts for flights within the UK which arrive at their destination more than 1 hour late. Under the plan, which is under consultation, passengers would be entitled to 100% of the ticket price for a delay of more than 3 hours. Up to 1 million women in Britain are at risk of experiencing harm from gambling, according to new research. The charity Gamble Aware is launching a campaign to highlight the warning signs of problem gambling. Studies show the number of women using online gambling is rising faster than men, as Emma Birchley reports.
When Lisa won £127,000 at poker 20 years ago, it changed everything, but not for the better. In attempting to relive that moment, she lost £500,000 and ended up homeless with her children. But even then, it didn't stop.
Every single day, that's all I could think about, morning, noon and night, was gambling. And it wouldn't matter what, where I used to drive for miles to find different bookmakers where people didn't know me, different casinos. I'd go to horse racing meetings on my own.
Finally, 4 years ago, after spending her wedding night in a casino in Las Vegas, Lisa decided to go to a Gamblers Anonymous meeting, one of only 2 women in a room of nearly 40 people. But research has revealed that up to 1 million women are at risk of harm due to gambling, and now a new campaign is highlighting the warning signs.
For free advice and support to keep your gambling under control, search Be Gamble Aware.
It comes as gambling adverts are increasingly directed towards women, a growing market. Almost 6 million women and girls over 16 will have gambled in the past 4 weeks. The number gambling online has risen by 54% over the past 4 years, compared to a 28% increase for men. But 2 in every 5 women suffering high levels of harm may not be getting help due to stigma or shame. And what starts as entertainment can quickly become a hidden addiction.
A lot of them see what they're doing as quite an innocent, social, fun activity, and we need to make sure that they're aware of managing the amount of time they spend on it, the amount of money, and make sure that they don't hide their gambling from others.
The number of women seeking treatment for gambling has doubled in the past 5 years, but that's only a fraction of those in need of help. Lisa is doing her bit. She's setting up a women's support group through the charity Bet No More to help others like her regain control of their lives. Emma Birchley, Sky News, Essex.
Spotify has been stared into action by the escalating row over anti-vax content on its platform. The streaming giant says it's working to add advisory warnings to podcasts that discuss COVID-19, following criticism from the likes of Neil Young, Harry and Meghan. Spotify saying it's me or him and asked for his music to be removed. But Rogan, who hails from the world of martial arts, has been quick to hit back at his critics, not literally, insisting that his views have been misrepresented.
I'm not an anti-vax person.
Right.
In fact, I said I believe they're safe, and I encourage many people to take them. My parents were vaccinated. I just said I don't think that if you're a young, healthy person that you need it.
But we think that the real reason Spotify have taken action might be this: James Blunt threatening to release new music on their platform, including a single called You Were Beautiful, unless they remove Joe Rogan. He's very, very, very funny, James Blunt. Love him. Early arrivals to the main press centre at the Beijing Winter Olympics are being delighted, greeted by ice cream serving robots. There you go. Each person pays, receives a QR code that, when scanned, kickstarts the robot into action. Love that. Love it. Quick look at the weather.
Look forward to brighter skies. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Storm Corrie has gone now, leaving it fine for many, but it'll stay quite windy for a few hours yet. It's chilly, certainly is, with a frost in parts of the north and the west. Wintry showers there are bringing some icy stretches, mainly in the north.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Now, it sounds biblical. Frozen iguanas falling from the sky. What's all that about? Not quite the sky, but authorities in Florida have asked residents to look out for the large reptiles falling from trees during a recent cold snap. The temperatures in the Sunshine State, which are close to zero, can stun the iguanas and cause them to lose their grip and fall from the trees. Good news, they usually wake up again when the sun comes out and their bodies warm up. Meantime, residents have been urged to keep an eye out when walking underneath the trees. I think it's called hibernation, isn't it? Maybe not. Oh, look at them, they're everywhere. Some of the more eye-catching stories from this morning's papers for you as well. I loved this story this morning. Ross has put this together for you. Ever wondered what happens to all those online shopping parcels when you send them back? The Mail have taken us inside a giant warehouse in Glasgow for your unwanted clothes return, with teams of sniffers and steamers racing against the clock to get it back on sale. It's a practice that apparently costs $7 billion a year. Doing the sniff test. We've all done it. We've all done it. What was a bright and crisp Sunday for some parts of the country. This is what the Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, was doing, enjoying a stroll near Downing Street with his wife and his dog, Nova. The reason I wanted to show you this is because we convinced him on the show to buy a dog for the kids and named and shamed him until he did. Beautiful dog she is too. And the Times delves into the curious phenomenon of seeing faces that may or may not be there. Researchers in the States say that because of the makeup of our brains, we are more likely to see male faces in random objects, such as a former US President, Richard Nixon. In that pepper? I'm not sure that that's right, actually. What do you think? It's usually on a bits of toast as well, isn't it? I once saw there was a frying pan and there was a face of grease in it, and somebody had said that it looked like the face of Jesus. My headline on my local paper was, "Out of the frying pan, is this the Messiah?" Thank you very much. Coming up next, what could Sue Gray's report mean for the PM? We'll talk lockdown law with barrister Adam Wagner. Stay tuned. COVID vaccinations for healthcare workers will reportedly be scrapped. The Defence Secretary heads to Hungary, with the government expected to bolster its offer to NATO with a major military deployment. Around 11,000 homes still without power in England and Scotland after Storm Malik, with weather warnings now in place for Storm Corrie. The government says the space is open to take another look at mandatory COVID vaccinations for healthcare workers amid reports of a big U-turn. Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Simon Clarke, has told me that the Omicron variant is less severe, and this will inform any decision on whether to scrap compulsory jabs.
Well, this is a policy that we've always kept under review, and we've been trying to strike, throughout this pandemic, the right balance between having the maximum impact in terms of measures that support public safety in the face of the virus, but also have the minimum impact in terms of our wider freedoms as a society. And it's in that context that a decision was made last autumn to make sure that we went ahead with the mandatory vaccination policy. What we know about Omicron is that it is much more transmissible, but less severe. Any decision that's taken this week will reflect that reality. I can't prejudge the decision that is going to be made, but obviously we do recognise those realities, and that does open a space where we can look at this again.
Tamara's here. It was a bit spicy, wasn't it, this morning?
It was, yes. So he wouldn't commit to whether the government is not going to go ahead with insisting on compulsory vaccinations for NHS staff. That was due to come in on the 1st of April, but we understand they are having a meeting to discuss it, and they may well go ahead with scrapping that. Of course, MPs only voted on it in mid-December. It was very controversial. A lot of MPs insisted it should not happen, and they've had a lot of warnings from the Royal College of Nurses, Royal College of Midwives and so on, saying they absolutely support vaccination. Vaccination protects you, it protects patients, it protects everybody. But if you have to get rid of 1 in 20 NHS staff who are not vaccinated, that is going to really compromise patient care in a way they say could be catastrophic in some areas like maternity services. So they have been urging the government not to go ahead. There's also a logic reason as well, which is, you know, if vaccinations are not going to be compulsory in the years going forward, could you sack all these people and then find that they can just come back to their jobs later? So it looks like the government are now reconsidering. Simon Clarke said it was always going to be kept under review.
OK. For now, Tamara, thanks. Tomorrow's Take at 9 o'clock.
See you then.
Of course, also talking about money from people who formerly lived in Russia being given to the Conservative Party, and in addition to that, talking about the national insurance increase as well. Meantime, the wait for Sue Gray's report is beginning to feel a bit like Groundhog Day, but there are suggestions that a redacted version is imminent. Joined now by Adam Wagner, a human rights barrister, who's represented people charged with breaking lockdown rules. Hi, Adam. It's good to see you again. We're being told by Downing Street this morning that they still don't have any sign of this report. Even when they do get it, it's not going to be what Sue Gray had originally planned. Or is it? The Met have told her that they want it to be reined in a bit. Does she have to take notice of what they say?
Legally, she doesn't. At the moment, as far as I understand it, there's no arrests have been made. And maybe there are no arrests made. There's no criminal proceedings afoot. These are, at the moment, what the Met are saying is this is still in the realm of giving people fixed penalty notices. So, you know, £60, £100 tickets effectively for breaking lockdown rules, which is what the vast majority of people who were found by the police to break lockdown rules did. So I don't think there's any legal reason why Sue Gray needs to redact anything at all. There may be an agreement between her and the Metropolitan Police. I see from the Metropolitan Police statements, they keep saying they've been working very closely with Cabinet Office. So this may well have all been choreographed, but also it may have just been a sort of a big mess that was imposed on Sue Gray at the last minute, which is another way of interpreting what happened in the later half of last week.
The Met have changed their wording from saying findings could prejudice any investigation to they need to protect the integrity of the investigation. How significant is that difference legally?
It's a huge difference. And one of the reasons that a lot of lawyers, including me, really bristled when they saw that original statement. This could prejudice an investigate. We asked Sue Gray, you know, to hold back on certain aspects because it could prejudice in investigations. Because prejudice is what you say when something is potentially there are proceedings. So any reporting of those proceedings could end up being a contempt of court, which is a really serious thing. It's a legal matter, and it relates to when somebody's been arrested and then beyond charged, or where there's a trial. And you'll be well aware, Kay, that you know the media have to be very careful, and people also on social media have to be very careful not to report in a way which might influence a jury later down the line or now, and prevent a fair trial taking place. But that word prejudice was actually the wrong word to use, it seemed, because they've not arrested anyone. This isn't any more serious at the moment than fixed penalty notices. So they've changed their to this sort of vague protect the integrity of the investigation, which is, I mean, I guess it means we don't want people seeing the evidence that their colleagues have given to Sue Gray before we interview them in a way which will be compliant with the usual rules of police investigations. But it's I think it was potentially an inappropriate use of that word, and a sort of a slight overuse of the police power to influence what was going on.
When I was a young journalist, we always used to be told, if in doubt, leave it out, or ask the lawyer. So let me ask you, what would you be advising Sue Gray to do, given what the Met have been saying to her?
Well, one thing that I know from my experience in practice is that you never quite know what's going on behind the scenes, and it's never quite as you expect. So it may be that the police are considering more serious offences. You know, there's a possibility, or there are not a likelihood of misconduct in public office, which is a much more serious offence with prison sentences potentially at the end of it, or tampering with the evidence if the emails and text messages were deleted, perversion of the cause of justice. So that's one possibility. And if that is a possibility, even just a vague possibility, I would be advising Sue Gray to be very cautious about what she puts out. If the police have said to her, it's just fixed penalty notices, and bearing in mind that the police had the opportunity in December to get in front of Sue Gray. And if at that point they'd said, look, Sue, hold back, we'll do our investigation first, we'll do it all in a way which is compliant with our procedures, then you can go next and put your public report out after we've considered fixed penalty notices, that would have been much neater. But instead, there's now this real mess where everybody's waiting for a constitutionally important report, which will, which is very politically important. And the police have sort of, quite, very late in the day, rode in on their horses and said, well, we're going to do it instead, so please hold off. And I think it will leave nobody particularly satisfied for now, although in the end we may find out what really happened, but it may take a lot longer.
Which leads me to the Lib Dem leader, Ed Davey, saying the day before yesterday that the Met's handling of the Sue Gray report is undermining public trust in the police. Do you agree? Or to what extent do you agree?
I think that it remains to be seen, because at the moment, I think people are probably looking at it and just with confusion. You know, what is going on? We thought the Sue Gray report was meant to come out a week ago or 10 days ago. Where is it? And what's all this business with the police? I think if the police do a thorough investigation and come to the right outcome, then that will increase or at least not undermine trust with the police. The whole reason they're investigating, if you heard Cressida Dick's statement, is that the offences themselves that the government are being accused of, these officials are being accused of, undermine the legitimacy of the law, because obviously it's the lawmakers themselves who are potentially breaching the law. That's the whole point of this investigation. So ultimately, if it's done properly and well, it will restore, hopefully, trust in public institutions, that they can self-regulate. Well, I suppose not self-regulate, but they can be regulated. They aren't outside of the control of the usual institutions that regulate these kind of rules and offences. So, but at the moment, it looks very messy, and it looks like the police are stuck between a rock and a hard place, because they decided to wait and now are sort of halfway behind Sue Gray and not really knowing what to do about it.
Good to talk to you, Adam. Thank you. Thanks very much. I'm sure we'll chat again during the course of the week. Hopefully we'll get that report before the end of the week. Thank you. Former Justice Secretary and lawyer David Gauke is with us now. Lots to talk to you about, Mr. Gauke. Should we just carry on with that while we're on the subject, the Sue Gray report? Do you think the Metropolitan Police, given what you've heard, have potentially overstepped?
I don't know if they have. I mean, it's certainly been the case that Metropolitan Police's communications have been flawed. I think there clearly is an issue in terms of, they took one position, then another position, whether they were going to investigate, and now they are investigating, whether there was a need for a delay in the publication of the Sue Gray report in full or not. That position has moved around. Where I do have a sort of degree of sympathy, I think, for them is that all these choices were quite difficult for them. And I suspect where they've got to in terms of the reason why they've asked Sue Gray not to publish all the details is that if you are doing an investigation as a police force and you're interviewing a suspect, you don't necessarily want that suspect to know all the information that you know. That can make that investigation harder. So I suspect that is the unstated reason why the police have asked Sue Gray to pull some of the details from her report. But it looks very messy. It is unfortunate for the police. But I think we have to judge the police, as Adam Wagner, your previous speaker, has said. I think we need to judge the police's behaviour, over time, and let's see what happens over the next few weeks.
Is that not a sledgehammer to crack a nut, though, if we're talking about fixed penalty notices, which is not a criminal record?
Well, this is still a very important investigation. And yes, you're absolutely right to say these are offences that have pretty minor punishments as a matter of law. But clearly, this is going to be an investigation that has a huge amount of interest in it. The public will be very concerned as to what conclusions are reached. And therefore, you can see why the Metropolitan Police might be very cautious to make sure that they, to the best of their abilities, can get to the truth. So, yes, I take your point at one level, but of course, this is much more than the fines that may or may not be levied on particular individuals. This will get to the heart of a very big political issue and about whether there is a culture of rule breaking inside Downing Street and a culture of cover up as well. So these are important matters.
To that end, you've written an article in the New Statesman entitled "There are no good reasons for Boris Johnson to remain as Prime Minister." It's a bit harsh.
Well, I don't write the title, but what I do in my article in the New Statesman is run through some of the arguments that many of my former colleagues in the Conservative Party are making as to why the Prime Minister should stay. The argument that, he's not a bank robber, or everyone was breaking the rules and so on. Those are not good arguments. And if you find yourself making those points, then it suggests there's something sort of fairly serious here. This is not about, as I say, whether offences that are treated with relatively minor punishments within the law were breached. This is not about a piece of cake. Whether there was a cake or not, it is about whether there was a culture inside Downing Street, Boris Johnson's Downing Street, that took the view that the rules weren't really for them, that they were above the rules that were being imposed on the country as a whole, and then questions about what has been said subsequently, where we have heard stories of assurances that there were no parties in Downing Street, to a sort of sense, well, no one told me that it was a party. None of those are particularly good arguments. And the issue, and I can fully understand why Conservative MPs are waiting for the Sue Gray report, and maybe they'll then wait for the police report. I think that is understandable at one level. But what we already know does suggest that the culture inside Downing Street was not acceptable. And at a time when the nation did need to stick to the rules and our leaders needed to set a good example, it is worrying that that was not happening.
Talk to me about national insurance. It's going to be very frustrating for Tory backbenchers to have to swallow an increase in taxation, given that the Tory manifesto said that that was not going to happen. You know many of them very well. How will this be going down? It was a tussle, apparently, between the Prime Minister and the Chancellor, and the Chancellor won.
Yes, and look, I think there certainly is disquiet on the Conservative backbenchers about the plan. I personally don't think it is by any means a perfect plan for how you raise the money or precisely where the money is going. But I think it is the right thing that the Chancellor won this battle, because had the national insurance contribution increase not gone ahead, and it's still possible that the Prime Minister might change his mind, but assuming that it doesn't go ahead, it does go ahead, I think that is the right thing to do, because had they pulled it at this stage, I think that would have sent a very bad signal to the markets. I think that would have damaged the credibility of the government in being able to ensure that the public finances are on a sound footing. We are going to have to spend more taxpayers' money on health and social care over the years ahead, and that structural change is going to have to be paid by a permanent structural change in our tax system. A windfall tax, a temporary tax, won't pay for a permanent increase in spending. So the money does have to come from somewhere. And I think there are better ways in which you can raise the money than national insurance contributions. If you're raising money on income tax is a better tax than national insurance contributions. But the government, having made that announcement, I think it would be very dangerous for it to back away, because Conservative backbenchers are kicking off and complaining to the Prime Minister. So if he's had a wobble but overcome that, then I think that is a good thing. And I think it is right that the Chancellor prevails on this matter.
Very quickly, before I let you go, Mr. Gott, we're slightly out of time, but I did just want to ask you about the reference that David Cameron has made in the past, calling Boris Johnson a slippery piglet. It does look as though, he is the comeback kid and he's survived again.
Well, his stamina, it has to be said, is impressive. He sort of just keeps on ploughing through. Look, there's been delays in the inquiries, and maybe that is helping him. But in the end, I would hope we would get to the truth as to what happened. And then there's a question for Conservative MPs and the public. Are we content to have a Prime Minister who, on the face of it, is to take a very, very relaxed view to rules and restrictions that apply to the country as a whole?
So eloquently put. I wish I'd written that down. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Gawke. Thank you.
Thanks, Kay. Thank you.
Trainee nurse in Ireland has put a creative spin on the pandemic by painting artistic masterpieces wearing PPE. Chloe Slevin painted the Corona Lisa to raise money for a children's charity, and she's with us now. Hi, Chloe.
Hi, how are you?
I'm very well. I love your fringe. How gorgeous are you? Talk to me about your idea.
Yeah, so I just kind of I've been taking kind of classic paintings over the last few years and been putting my own spin on it. Kind of they're all like COVID themed, PPE related, but I've adapted them to suit our lives now, and it's definitely what my life has become over the last few years. So I've sort of had a painting in each year of my studies so far. I'm going to have to work on another one for my final year. But yeah, I've sold them all for charity, and I intend to keep doing that, really.
I love it. That's the girl with the pearl earring, I'm guessing. How many have you done?
3 now, yeah. So I've the girl with the surgical mask, I have the separation of Adam, and my most recent one is the Corona Lisa.
And what's going to happen to them?
Well, the Corona Lisa, so the other 2 have been auctioned off previously, but the Corona Lisa actually goes on auction this morning. So that auction will open at 10 o'clock with Herman and Wilkinson auction rooms. It's an online auction, and the link can be found on my Twitter. That's at ClayPalgal. So even if you just look
what
up...
your Twitter feed is? Sorry, what's your Twitter handle again? Sorry.
It's ClayPalgal.
ClayPalgal, okay.
Yeah.
And the auction opens then. Fantastic. And the money is going, you said, to a children's hospital?
Children's hospice, yeah. So to Laura Lynn. It's the only children's hospice in the Republic of Ireland. And in studying children's nursing, I've learned so much about Laura Lynn and the care that they provide for these children and their families.
Amazing. What amazing work you do.
They are just amazing charity.
Yeah. Well, amazing work that you do, and then you do this in your spare time, and then you give the money to a children's hospice. Well done, you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Much appreciated. Thank you. Still far too beautiful for my liking, though, on a Monday morning, frankly. Now, for something you don't often see outside of a sleepover, pillow fighting. Here we go, the pillow fighting championships. I want to play their first ever champions in Florida over the weekend with both men and women's divisions. The event took athletes more used to mixed martial arts and boxing and handed them a special pillow to thrash their opponents with. Each winner earned a title belt and $5,000 US. That takes you back, doesn't it? Maybe not quite. Yeah. Yeah, it's not like Greece, is it? Not like Sandra D, is it? We love it, though. Still to come in the next hour, we're going to be speaking to Labour, asking them about the suggestion that the government may be scrapping mandatory jabs for NHS workers. We'll find out what Labour thinks about that in just a few moments' time. Do stay tuned for more.